Wii scandal has continued to get more and more bad or good, depending on who you're talking about. Bad for anybody concerned about integrity or trust or any form of ethics when it comes to government. Good when it comes to the liberals, basically, and the people involved with them. And I would say the establishment as a whole. But also, the point to get into here is Blacklock's reporter actually came out with this. Again, credit to them for doing actual, real journalism. One of the few remaining journalists or journalist outlets in Canada that actually do that. But anyway, new Lucky Quebec contractor awarded $382 million for pandemic masks, delivered zero to date, though Government of Canada Health promised them by July. Documents reveal the value of the contract three times amount previously disclosed. And again, um, the point to be here is that we don't know exactly what's going on, but the one thing we do that's going on is a lot of corruption. And again, this just falls even more and more um, into the idea that completely proves my hypothesis, I guess, in that um, the left always complains about corporate corruption and all. If you ever follow the NDP circles in Alberta, you'll see this all the time. And that, oh, Kenny's given money to his oil buddies, and Kenny's given money to this, and it's the corporate corruption that they're concerned about. And again, they're right about to an extent. They're definitely right to an extent. The reason why what they're complaining about seems to fall on deaf ears, is, at least in Alberta, is that anybody with half a brain knows that if you give the left the power, they do the exact same thing. Now, people say, "Oh, they're one and of the same." No, they're really not one and of the same. In that, um, if you look at the difference, being is that the voters actually don't want that. The voters don't want that, and the other thing too is that um, the left tends to do a better job with getting away with it, and that it's rather established that this is the problem. It tends to happen more on the right, but no one seems to talk about it on the left. Now, why do they not talk about it on the left? Is because people perceive it as benefiting them. Again, it's the whole, oh yeah, this corruption's going on, but at least we have our free healthcare, right? So that's kind of the thought pattern there. But again, the main point here being is why this, I guess the point being is that the scandal keeps getting worse, but yet people seem to care about it less. The other thing that came out too is that, not nearly as big, but um, we basically gave Justin Trudeau's mom a Mercedes, which I heard was an S-Class Mercedes, which you're talking at least six figures for that, probably upwards of a quarter mil for that car, which again which is a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of money we're talking about in the Wii 900 million thing, this thing. So yeah, that's a drop in the bucket, but it's still something that should be talked about. Again, it's like I say too, that this is why when the left complains, it immediately falls on deaf ears for anybody paying attention, because they do the exact same thing. And again, the reason why it's not the same between the left and the right is that on the right, um, at least the voters, the politicians, I think are different. I think pretty much all politicians are bad, regardless of what side they're on. But the point being is that the average everyday person, the average everyday right leaning person wants less government power, which means less of a barrier and less of a chance of this kind of corporate corruption, corporate greed stuff to happen. Because again, the less money that the government has and the less power the government has, the less likely they're going to be able to do this kind of stuff, because they don't have as much power, and specifically unchecked power. And again, this is the problem with the left, is that they're shocked and appalled when this kind of stuff goes on, but their solution to it is just to give the government more power. It's literally like, giving the local bank robber, um, letting them listen into all the police scanners, and letting them listen into basically letting them work at run the police department. That's pretty much like, again, that's the problem, is that you have to have a government that is as small and has the least power as possible. But again, the left wants the government to be as big and powerful as possible. In fact, they want the government to be almost infinitely big. At least a lot of leftists, not all leftists, but the average one wants them to be very, very big. Maybe not full on communist, but the average one, I mean, let's just face it, at this point, too, the average leftist voter wants socialism. It doesn't matter what they call themselves. Again, people can call themselves whatever they want. Again, Antifa calls themselves anti-fascists, even though they go around beating people who disagree with them politically. Again, it doesn't matter what people call themselves. It matters what people actually believe. And the problem, again, being is that the vast majority of people on the left support free healthcare. The vast majority of people on the left support a massive welfare state. They support, indoctrinating kids in school. They support all the usual far left stuff. Again, they don't like calling themselves that because they know it has a bad stigma around it, and rightfully so. The stigma should be even worse than it is. But again, this is why the whole democratic socialist or social democrat has came up, because anybody with half a brain knows anyone who calls themselves a socialist is a complete kook usually, or they're a complete sociopath usually, but at least the politicians. Um, but again, getting back to the main point, we don't know exactly what is going on here because we don't know the whole story. But again, the one thing we do know is that there is a lot of corruption going on within this government. Again, we have billions of dollars of infrastructure money that is just gone missing. We don't even know where it went. I think McKenna is heading that stuff up again. And then I guess the last point I wanted to bring up is that how bad do things have to get before people question it? I mean, true, the liberals are down in the polls. To be fair, yeah, the liberals are down in the polls, but I still think that they're actually slightly ahead of the conservatives. Now, part of that may be the fact that the conservatives don't really have a de facto leader right now. And it's likely that they come out of the leadership debate or the leadership race with a poor leader, especially McKay and to some degree O'Toole. Lewis is a bit of a wild card. I think Sloan would be very good. The problem with Sloan is that he would be the one the media would attack the most, which would not bear very well. So that's the problem with the conservatives, is that any leader with their brain at least halfway on straight will never get a fair shake. Now, no matter who you are, you won't get a fair shake. I mean, Scheer was the furthest to the left conservative leader that probably ever existed, and yet he still was viciously attacked all the time. But again, when you're actually conservative, I mean, look at Trump. I mean, he's at least somewhat conservative, and look at how the media treats him. So that is kind of the one thing to bring up too, is that nothing's really going to change. Nothing's really going to change because there's kind of the political factions in Canada are at the point to where I don't think there's any way that we really resolve our disputes, and that we have the blind leftist supporters, which is probably, I don't know, 30 to 40% of the Canadian population, depending on the day. You have the blind conservative supporters, which is probably, I don't know, 20-25% of the population. And then you have the people that don't vote, and then of the people that are still around that are voting, you have the actual principled people that are largely the PPC kind of Wexit people that usually are too principled to vote for anyone, really. And again, I don't blame them. I mean, I do blame them if there's an actual conservative in power, which there wasn't last time around. But again, like we're at the point too, like I say, like would Stephen Harper really be that bad of an alternative compared to what we're at right now? Like, I don't think it is, even though I disagree with him on a lot of stuff, but at least Stephen Harper isn't regulating an entire massive industry out of existence. At least Stephen Harper isn't pushing these insane, social justice warrior crap on everyone. Like, this is this is the one area where I disagree with the libertarians and the anarchists and some of the Wexit people, is that we're at the point to where eventually it's going to be realistic to say, hey, like a actual centrist is a lot better than a socialist. Like, is it nearly where we want to be? No. But is it a lot better than what we have? Yeah. And that's what I've been saying for basically the entirety of me making videos is that I'm a firm believer in lesser of two evils voting, assuming that there's an actual difference between the lesser of two evils. People simply take that and be like, hey, yeah, if you're generally on the right, then you just blindly vote for the right. If you're generally on the left, you blindly vote for the left. But no, I don't believe that. I believe that if there actually is a distinct difference, and um, prior to the last time around, I think there was. Especially now, like if you had the Stephen Harper conservatives of 10, 15 years ago, were they great? Absolutely not. They were not great, but they're a heck of a lot better than what we have right now. Like I don't believe the Stephen Harper conservatives of 15 years ago would be running a $350 billion deficit if COVID would have hit, 10, 15 years ago. I don't believe that for a second. Would they have run a big deficit? Yeah, but if it would have been nearly this high, no. So again, I've kind of talked about a lot of topics here, but again, the main point being is that how bad is this scandal going to have to get before there's? I mean, the one thing you have to give to is that people like Pierre Poilievre have done a good job pushing back on this kind of stuff. Andrew Scheer, kind of because he's not really the de facto leader going forward, is only so much he can really do. He's kind of just blindly criticizing. But again, Pierre Poilievre, I think, is doing a very good job. I think he's one of the few people in the Conservative Party that's actually that I would actually consider voting for, I guess is a good way of putting it. But again, that's the problem, is that we have no real opposition. Again, the mainstream media wouldn't criticize the Liberals if every single Liberal MP killed someone live on camera. The media would never. The media will not criticize them no matter what they do. And that's one of the other many problems. Again, this is why Canada is going downhill fast, is because people just they don't they people the average person just doesn't seem to care. And if they do care, a lot of times it's they're buying into the brainwashing, they're buying into the lies. So again, there's many aspects of this, but again, the main one being is that I'm not sure how bad the corruption is going to have to get before people take note. And again, the leftist answer would be, "Oh, you guys don't care about all the Kenny corruption and all the stuff they're doing," which, yeah, I do think that they're doing a lot. I mean, I think the left blows it out of proportion to some degree. In fact, I know they do. But um, again, the difference being is that the left solution is just to give the government more power, which is only going to make the problem worse. And the government knows that, so they'll play right into it. And when it doesn't work out, rather than not admitting they're wrong, which the left never does, admitting you're wrong is one of like the biggest don't do if you're on the left. It's 100 million died in the name of leftist causes over the last century, and yet no one ever questions these far left ideologies. So again, they'll never admit they're wrong no matter what, and that's one of the many reasons why Canada is going downhill fast. Um, Again, so that's basically what I wanted to talk about today. I'll leave it there. I could talk forever. But anyway, if you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my BitChute, my Twitter, my Parlay, and check out all the links that are in the description. Make sure you follow me on those other platforms if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more.